Good evening, Angela Pearman with ABC News. Already devastated by last week's huge earthquake, Taiwan was today rocked by a massive aftershock which toppled buildings and killed at least 5 people. The aftershock came as rescue workers were still trying to dig out survivors of the original quake.
130 hours on, an amazing discovery. A 20-year-old man pulled alive from the ruins of a 12-storey hotel that collapsed in Tuesday's earthquake. Minutes later, his 25-year-old brother is also found. The two kept themselves alive eating rotten apples from a fridge buried with them. Earlier, rescuers were sent scrambling when a new tremor rocked the island. Measuring 6.8 on the Richter scale, it was a strong earthquake in its own right, toppling buildings already weakened by the first quake. Most had been evacuated, but a young girl was killed when a tree fell on her as she waited on the street outside her apartment block. The government has declared a state of emergency, authorising the military and police to maintain order. Taiwan's largest quake this century has claimed more than 2,000 lives. Another 200 are still trapped beneath the rubble. Prue Clark, ABC News.
As Indonesian soldiers continue to move out of East Timor, the people of the capital, Dili, are coming home. Although much of the city has been burned and looted, residents are emerging from hiding by the hundreds. The multinational force says the return is evidence that their presence is restoring stability. Meanwhile, Indonesian soldiers continue to move out of the city, bringing an end to 24 years of military rule in East Timor. Many of the departing troops took advantage of the opportunity to sell their unused ration packs to the returning residents. But today also saw more grim evidence of the reign of terror which followed the independence vote. 2 more bodies were unearthed near the city. One had been shot, the other stabbed. Units of the multinational force are moving into the hills to bring food to those who are still afraid to go home. The prospect of national service in Australia to provide more troops for East Timor has been ruled out by the Defence Force. Although the Prime Minister said national service was on the agenda last week, the head of the Defence Force, Admiral Barry, today said it was no longer being considered as an option. New Zealanders will go to the polls on the 27th of November. Prime Minister Jenny Shipley will face Labor's Helen Clark amid grim economic forecasts for the country. Shipley's National Party has held office for 9 years, but opinion polls put Labor's Helen Clark well ahead. Sydney's Rugby League Grand Final has produced one of the game's greatest upsets. In only its 2nd year in the competition, Melbourne snatched the premiership from St George Illawarra with a penalty try in the final minutes. The Dragons were cruising with a lead of 14-0 at half-time, but Melbourne stormed home to claim the game's biggest prize.
Early it looked like
Australia will play France in the final of the Davis Cup after the young Australians wrapped up the semi-final against Russia in Brisbane today. Highlight of today's play was 18-year-old Leighton Hewitt's crushing defeat of the world number 2 Yevgeny Kafelnikov. Hewitt beat the Russian in straight sets. Cup newcomer Wayne Arthurs completed the victory with a straight set win over Marat Safin. Australia will now play France in the final in the first week of December. The Australians will be chasing their first Cup win in 13 years. And finally, a quick look at the weather around Australia for the start of the week. Showers for Sydney, Brisbane and Perth, mainly fine in Canberra, and a fine sunny day for Adelaide, Darwin, Hobart and Melbourne. And that's all from the ABC Newsroom this evening. Good night.